7 o'clock. So, welcome to New Freedom. Welcome to Position of Neutrality. Got to do this thing. How many of you are members here tonight? All right. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for coming out. How many of you are alumni here tonight? All right. Thank you. How many of you are staff here? Where's my 360 staff? Cool. Thank you all for coming to support the community. A special night tonight, at least for most of us that have been here a minute. Welcome home, Jennifer McGrath. If you don't know Jennifer's story, she came here and served our population, and then she caught a little beef from her past, and she went and with dignity served some time. She's had a lot of loss in her life, but she came back here to serve, and we're proud to have her. And I promised I would shout out to Lori online tonight. Lori, you serve our people, and we appreciate you too. And here's your shout out. Any of you that have Lori as a case manager, you might want to say, Lori, we love you. Lori, we love you. There you go. I think I got. Okay, so the other things to know. On Thursday night, your families are welcome here. On Saturday night at the Recovery Church, your families are welcome here. And on Wednesday night, Wayne and Brian do an interactive discussion group to go over whatever we go over here in case you guys want to do some more intimate discussion. And all of those are open to people. If you're going to come in here and sponsor people in the population, we like you to go through with Wayne and Brian, and so that we're aligned in the fact of what we teach and how we teach around here. That's all right. So tonight we're going to take a look at step 4. Anyone here for the first time tonight? Okay, there are a few. Okay. So for those of you here for the first time, you may perceive us just a little different than other meetings of other fellowships you may have attended. And the primary reason that's liable to happen is that we intend for you to have a different experience here. So what we do here is we take a look at the suggested instruction for a step or so a week directly out of this book. And we use this book in 12-step recovery. Why? Yeah, the process described by the authors of this book has been proven to work by addicts of the hopeless variety, addicts to alcohol and other substances. So what we do here is basically I show you how I find my experience in the book. It may look like I'm telling you what the book says, but that is not what I'm trying to do, because it's none of my business what the book says to you. What I'm trying to do is show you how I find my experience in it and encourage you to have your experience. And if we both do our job, we will share a spiritual experience in this room tonight. How many of you have been here before and can witness that happen? Very good. And for those of you online, they raised their hands. The anonymous nature of our fellowships, we can't show you that. But what we're indicating to you is that when we speak of a spiritual experience in 12-step recovery, we're speaking of a sensory experience. You will feel it. And when you do, I'll know and I'll call it to your attention, because we would cheat you to talk to you about the power we call God without giving you a demonstration. Fair enough? So tonight we're going to take a look at step 4, the instructions of which are found starting at the bottom of page 63 of your book, if you want to follow along. And it starts at the very bottom of the page. It says, next we launched out on a course of vigorous action. So how many of you have read the portion of the book that says we were rocketed into a 4th dimension of existence we had not even dreamed? How many of you ever heard that? How many of you thought that sounded like a really cool metaphor? Where's my meth addicts? We like rockets, right? Okay. So step 3 was the launching pad. Step 4 is the rocket. Next, we launched. Does that make sense? Some of you are feeling that. So the thing that we fear the most, once we get armed with the facts about ourselves, who we are and whose we are, that fear falls away, and all of a sudden I'm able to live in the present. The 4th dimension of existence, the here and now. Does it make sense? Okay. So the first step of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us had never attempted. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. Our liquor was but a symptom, so we had to get down to causes and conditions. So they said something fairly profound to people who do fellowship alone. How many of you in your addiction discovered in time that alcohol or methamphetamines or cocaine or heroin or fentanyl wasn't the main problem for you? How did you discover it? Well, yeah, exactly right. We stopped using, problem still there. Anyone else have that experience? So the alcohol was a synthetic spirit I used to invoke a synthetic spiritual experience, but I need a more organic experience. And in time, I had to have a better plan because what I had been doing was simply no longer working. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so we had to get down to causes and conditions. Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding and a fact-facing process. It's an effort to discover the truth about the stock in trade. One object is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods, to get rid of them promptly and without regret. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values. We did exactly the same thing with our lives. Sorry we read so long, but we had to get through all of that to get to that last sentence. So what was exactly the same thing? Took stock honestly, get down to the truth. Did you ever notice in your process, how many of you have done a 4-step inventory along the way? Good, a good percentage of you. How many of you are contemplating doing one? Okay. Okay, well, we're going to help you understand why you might want to do one, right? So most of us who have done a 4-step inventory have learned that there's often a little bit of difference between my truth, your truth about me, and the truth about me. And what we find is our suffering exists in their truth about me and my truth about me, and my freedom comes in the truth about me. Does that make sense? So we would want to get down to that, right? And then it says one object was to find damaged or unsaleable goods. Now, they wouldn't have said one object if there wasn't more than one object, would there? They called that to our attention. How many of you were of the impression that the 4-step inventory was just about telling that secret? You're as sick as your secrets. That's what we hear, and it's true to a certain extent. But there are no secrets in the realm of the Spirit. So what we need to learn, since we are going to enter the realm of the Spirit, and we're going to walk in the realm of the Spirit, is I got to know that it's fine to disarm my worldly ways. So where'd they tell me this power was found? Deep down inside. And how do we find it? Sometimes we have to search fearlessly. And in the last analysis, it's only there that he may be found. Sometimes it's obscured by calamity, pomp, and worship. So the calamity, pomp, and worship is obscuring me from that which I seek. Does that make sense? So it's not the dirty secret about me I'm trying to find. That's just the horse shit obscuring my pony. There you go. So keep seeking till you find the great reality, because that's what we're after. Because once you find the great reality, power and purpose within you, then you'll be able to walk out in your power and purpose. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So it says we did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. Being convinced that self manifested in various ways is what had defeated us, we considered its common manifestations. They're assuming I'm convinced because they asked me at some point, was I convinced that self manifested in various ways what defeated me? When did they ask me that? That was the essence of my 3rd-step decision. Some of you are thinking, I don't even know what manifested means, right? Because we assume we know words. But basically, when I experience fear that I'm not good enough or I'm too good or whatever, I'll try and act in a different way than who I really am in order to win your confidence or feel better about me or something, and that's a self-manifesting. Does that make sense? So now, am I convinced that self-manifested, the guy I was trying to be for you, to prove to you that I could use more, run more, be more, whatever? Any of you get caught up in the, but I also wanted to be this guy? Okay, so that confusion is what's defeated me, yes? Okay, so now they're not going to make me make up what these manifestations of self are. They're actually going to tell me the common manifestations so I can chase them back to the root fear. Fair enough? So we're at resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease, for we've not only been mentally and physically ill, we've been spiritually sick. How many of you have concluded that, and how many of you still have trouble with that? Because half our original fellowship were atheists or agnostics to begin with, so we're going to assume there's still a little doubter in all of us. Yes? Okay. So, spiritual sickness is that outward manifestation that I can clearly recognize. Perhaps, you ever see an animal wandering in the street, and they're all matted? And you just know intuitively, there's something wrong with that animal. It's not keeping itself clean. How come you don't know that when you see your brother and sister out there? Somebody felt that. Who felt that? There you go. That's the power we call God. That happens in you. Right? Okay, so we have been spiritually sick. Because we've got, so I'm going to need a spiritual healer, aren't I? Okay. All right, so it says, for we had not only been mentally and physically ill, we'd been spiritually sick. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. See, sometimes we get it twisted as humans. I got to fix my physical. I need a different house. I need a different job. I need a different spouse. No, you need to empower your spirit. You need to strengthen your spirit. All the rest of that will come. Yes? Okay, so in dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. Now, who's we? The first 100. So the first 100 in dealing with resentments, they set them on paper. In dealing with resentments, how do you do it? The bar stool. I set them on my partner's ear. All right. Anyone else? Okay, so we're going to learn some new tools for navigating this realm of the spirit, and one of the things is how to unpack. So quit poisoning the consciousness and start getting prepared with the facts about me. And right? Chap gave a sermon last Saturday about taking the facts to the truth again. A hopeless alcoholic could not stop unless I got locked up or chained down. Even when they let me up, I got out and did it again. And then one day, pow, it never happened again. I was an alcoholic, a drug addict of the hopeless variety. I had a letter from a psychiatrist that told me and anyone who cared to read it that for 6 months I'd been under his care and I was emotionally and mentally incapable of conducting any personal business. And I stand before you today as the Chief Executive Officer of New Freedom. Not through my power. Okay. All right. So, that's the spiritual malady overcome. All right. So, it says we listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we are angry. We ask ourselves why we are angry. You guys know how that works? How many of you have been angry at people, institutions, principles? Okay. Did you just point at them, or did you ask yourself why? You're angry right now? Is that what you said? What are we angry about? Are you? How's that helping? Or is it? We're going to help you, man. I like your spirit. We're going to help you. Did we tell you welcome home today? All right, man. Did you tell him welcome home today? All right. All right, man. So we ask ourselves why we're angry. So the next question, if you know you're angry, ask yourself why. And it's a simple thing. Self, why am I angry? And then let's see if what they say is, in most cases it was found that our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambitions, Our personal relationships, including sex, were hurt or threatened, so we were sore, we were burned up. I always used to ask people, we're kind of energy thieves as humans. And so we'll see something we're familiar with and we'll just start acting out in kind. But none of that stuff has anything to do with us, right? It's mostly thoughts. How many of you can think of a relationship right now that just pisses you off? Can you think of a, can you? Can you think? Okay, you got a bracelet on, but you know what? You're walking around free with a bracelet on. Baby steps. And you're in good company here. We celebrate people with bracelets. How many bracelets we got in here tonight? I know, there we go. Kelly got here today from 32 plus consecutive years incarcerated. So on our grudgelet, we set opposite each name our injuries. Was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal or sex relations which had been interfered with? I'm going to jump down from there because sometimes I go into detail there, but I don't think it's necessary tonight for some reason. We went back through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. Why not?
This is my search for the truth. My life depends on it.
There is no wrong answer. Right? Why do I need to be thorough and honest?
So I can be armed with the facts about it.
How many of you have lied to yourself and it did not change the outcome? So if I really want to get better and I really want to grow into an authentic me, then it would make sense that I would be thorough and honest at this stage of my development. Yes? Okay. When we were finished, we considered it carefully. Why would we do that?
My life depends on it.
How many of you have lied to you and didn't know you were lying to you? That's why I would want to consider it carefully. Because delusion is I lie to me and don't know that I'm lying. I used to think things I did harmful to others and myself were beneficial to me and others. And it wasn't until I started questioning my thoughts and my outcomes that I learned that not only was there a power within me that would allow me to act better than I felt like acting, but I found out I often knew the right answer when I thought I never knew the right answer. The first thing apparent was that this world and its people were often quite wrong. How many of you concluded that this week? To conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. You ever had one of those days where everybody was wrong? Did it start before you encountered anyone? The usual outcome was that people continued to wrong us and we stayed sore. Sometimes it was remorse and then we were sore at ourselves. How many of you thought you'd achieved perfection and then discovered that that were not maybe entirely so? Did you get mad at yourself? Did that help? Yeah, that's what we want. A lot of times we're really almost cruel to ourselves, thinking that we're beating somebody to the punch. But that self-talk is perfecting a lie in me about my identity. So we want to stop seeding that dishonesty into our thought life because we live our life in our thought life. Okay, but the more we fought and tried to have our own way, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived. It's plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. Is it plain to you? And if you haven't done a 4-step inventory, it may not be, because remember, they're writing about an experience they had. So to assume that everyone knows what they're talking about as gospel is simply not true. This is just their testimony about what happened. That makes sense? And I know I'm not expected to have the same experience they had until I've done the same thing they did. To the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile. So here's one of the discoveries that's maddening to us alcoholics of the hopeless variety, is I spent a lot of my life in resentment and futility, and I didn't know that it was me permitting it. In fact, I know I'm not the only one, because the Eagles wrote a song once upon a time. So oftentimes it happens that we live our life in chains and we never even know we have the key. And guess what the key is? The truth. The truth. All right. But with the alcoholic, whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. Any of you discovered you may be an addict, an alcoholic of the hopeless variety? Then the growth and maintenance of a spiritual experience is essential. Yes? Okay. So they said, we found that it's fatal, for when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns and we drink again, and with us to drink is to die. If we were to live, we had to be free of anger. But they tell us we were going to encounter in step 2, a power to live. Not a power to not do. It's a power to live, which I do not have of my own human origin. Even a logical, scientific view would say I don't possess that of my own. It flows through me, but not of me. Does that make sense? So if I am going to, how many of you in your addiction were alive according to medical standards, but were dead in the spirit? Like an empty shell of a man or woman just walking around. So we know what it is to walk around dead. Okay. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for alcoholics, these things are poison. So they're separating me from the population, the rest of the population of humanity. Humans are regular examples of self-will run riot. I'm alcoholic. I'm an extreme example of self-will run riot, and I don't think so. So the rest of the people, it's a dubious luxury, but if you want to run around angry, Godspeed. But I can't, because it shuts me off from the power to live that I so desperately need consciousness of. Okay? So we turn back to the list, for it held the key to the future. What is the key to the future? The truth. Not my truth, not their truth, the truth. The great reality deep down within. Make sense? Okay, we prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. I'm going to start looking at the world from an entirely different angle. Why? What is the insanity of alcoholism? A lack of perspective. The inability to think clearly. It manifests in me drinking when I know it won't do me well, but it manifests in a lot of other ways too, right? Okay. We began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. How many of you had that discovery? Where's my meth addicts? They were everywhere, weren't they? Not everyone could see all the people we could see, huh? They were nonetheless there. In that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, had the power to actually kill. How could we escape? So you want to ask yourself one thing. How many wrongdoings of others do you imagine in your life are fancied, and how many are real? Sean's going for 95% fancied. Anyone else? I always like people, because even if you're walking in a saintly life, the likelihood is no one else thinks about you quite as often as you think about you. And even if you are walking in a saintly life, the wrongdoing of others that you cling to still got the power to kill you, because it shuts me off from the power. So we don't want to hold on to a spirit of grievance, not even as a joke, because it has such terrible consequences to me as a being. Okay, so then it says, how could we escape? When they put a question mark, it's time to go inward. That would be the question, wouldn't it? I'm starting to agree with them. I get their experience. So, okay, how could we escape? Anyone with me? That's why they wrote a book, because they leave a question. They let us go inward and ponder it, and then we go forward and we see what they discovered and see if we can align. Make sense? All right? So we saw that these resentments must be mastered, but how? Anybody there? Resentments mastered. Okay. How? We could not wish them away any more than alcohol. So what was their first solution to resentments? To wish them away. People teach this book like it's a book of rules. It is not. It's a book of all the mistakes they made to wake up. And they wrote them down because they're common human mistakes. So the first thing, I'm not mad at anyone. I'm just mad at me. Where's my counselor? Kristen's here. She's heard that 1,000 times, I bet. Because I have. This was our course. We realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Wow, what a concept. I'm just starting to awaken to the fact that maybe, just maybe, I've been spiritually sickened. What are my symptoms?
Resentment, fear, guilt, shame, remorse.
Yeah, selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, fear, guilt, shame, remorse. I'm heavy laden with them. No wonder I'm struggling. Maybe that's their problem too. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way these disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. We asked God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. So they're talking to you about a prayer they said. So by this time they knew the power was tangible. You got to get that. They had a step 2 encounter. They felt a flow of the power, peace, happiness. They're moving in this new manner of living, and they're now, when they see people, they've learned something. There's another book some of you are familiar with. It says, how can you see the speck in your brother's eye when you cannot see the plank in your own eye? Better you should remove the plank from your eye so you can better see to help your brother. The plank in my eye is a perspective. Remember, we have alcoholic insanity is a lack of perspective. So what they're learning now, because they see how their self manifests, is they're asking for their judgment to be removed so they could better see to help their brother. And guess what happens when I ask for power to treat them with the same kindness and patience I would a sick friend? The healing they need flows through me. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God saved me from being angry. Yeah, do that. God. Power. There you go. Yeah, because we still got people that are still getting squishy on the word God, and we don't want to do that. God to us is a tangible experience. This is relationship, not religion. Does that make sense? And you're not going to form a relationship with a concept, or they will diagnose you with mental illness. But you will form a relationship with a tangible sensory experience, and we'll walk from there. Okay, so it's God saved me from being angry. How many of you have found you had the power to be kinder than you felt like being? How many of you were amazed at that ability at first? What is that but a power greater than you operating through you? So there's no reason not to continue doubting, because it happens for us, especially in this crowd. It has to. Because we can be cranky. Thy will be done. We avoid retaliation or argument. We wouldn't treat sick people that way. If we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful. We cannot be helpful to all people, but at least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. So for people that can't make sense of the word God because they're not quite informed in the Spirit enough to make sense, or their prejudice gets in the way, power to be kinder than I feel makes sense because we've shared that experience. God will, power will show me. Does that make sense? Okay. Referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done, we resolutely look for our own mistakes. Guys, if you're doing a 4-step inventory, you're probably going to have trouble with the resolutely part. That's why a human helps you. You don't have to call them anything. Call them a sponsor, call them a mentor, call them a closed-mouth friend. Whatever, the reality is it isn't them. It's just their encouragement. That's what we do here. Right? We inspire dignity by empowering the innate goodness in every human being. That's the experience you have when you walk in here and everyone says, welcome home. You go, what the fuck they selling? We ain't selling nothing, and you couldn't buy it if you wanted it. Because you know what it is? The only thing you can do here is grow in love and share it when you leave. Okay. So where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to avoid or disregard the other person involved entirely. Where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. So you've got a column after all this why I'm angry and all the things that affected, of what's my part. And I want to caution you, just like we do in 3, if you're new to recovery and you haven't done this, and you've suffered abuse as a child or as an adult, or from the system or whatever, we're not telling you you have a part in that. That's none of our business anyway. But what I am telling you is if you survived it, and you're still simmering in it, instead of sharing with someone else the grace that got you through it, then your unforgiveness is tethering you to an unpleasant event. And so we never even know we hold the key. I just have to repurpose my suffering. All right, so when we saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly, and we're willing to set these matters straight. Why am I willing to set the matters straight? Because I looked at them honestly, and really, I'd been kind of a dick. I just want to outgrow it. Notice that the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and the wife. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. So they're witnessing to you that fear, the experience of fear, touches every aspect of our lives. And we may mislabel it, but it causes that self to manifest. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. That's what they witnessed to in 3, the essence of the decision. Now in 4, I'm finding out if that's true for me. Make sense? So I might want to look at how fear manifests in me, because I'm going to have fears that are obvious that drive me to act out badly, anger and rage and what have you. How many of you have suffered from depression? Okay, so that's anger without enthusiasm. So you're just chained to a chair, and everyone says, just get up and do something, and you're incapable. Right? But it's a fear that's anchored you there. Yes? Okay. All right, so it was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve, but did we not ourselves set the ball rolling? So it's time to get honest with myself again. How many of you have lost an opportunity because though you wanted to do something, you never told anyone that could help you, and so they just got somebody else who did say they wanted to do it? You ever had that happen? How many of you have not gone to school or done something to better yourself because you thought, oh, that's going to take a lot of time? You know, I'm going to probably be 35 years old by the time I get through school. And then one day you're 35 and you still don't have an education. Anyway. Yeah. But did we not ourselves set the ball rolling? Sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. So we see how it steals our opportunities. If you get mad that other people are getting promotions that you should be getting, or good things are happening to them and you don't think they're deserving, it'll steal your joy too. Make sense? Because we just kind of got to get on board. We're all in this together. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper even though we had no resentment in connection with them. So they talked to us about some fears that are more subtle. How many of you, like me, would sit in a bar room or the trap house and like nothing going on, hours, days, night after night, sick as a dog, didn't want to leave just in case something happened? And if I left, I'd miss something. So the underlying fear is, I'm afraid I'm going to miss something. And it's caused me to not commit to loving relationships, to mistreat people. Anyone else know what I'm talking about? Okay. We ask ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Guys, this is so important when you're on your new launch, especially you here at New Freedom, but every human that can hear this. When we're in our new walk, if we think about how it's always been, we're never going to go where we're called to go. Because when you start walking in this power, you are a new creation on that day. Not because I say so, because he says so. So whatever has passed is gone. That person is dead. Walk out in your new identity. Self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. So they're clearly identifying now what they believe to be the main problem. Okay? Perhaps there's a better way. So they ask us to ponder, perhaps there's a better way. Did you go with them? Well, perhaps there is. Now they're going to tell you an informed opinion. We think so. Their opinion is more than an opinion. Their informed opinion is based on their experience. It's so important we understand this is the power of testimony. This isn't our testimony. This isn't anyone we've met in our lifetime's testimony, because they're all gone. But they left this for us, and they promised us in a vision, we'll surely meet some of you as we trudge the road of happy destiny. And you know that's a spiritual message. Because some of you have met some of them tonight. Right? Because we're having fellowship with them. All right. So, for we're now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. That's important. We're on a different basis, trusting and relying upon power. We trust infinite God, power, rather than our finite selves. We're in the world to play the role He assigns. I love the amens. How many of you have had a little rougher day and thought that you got assigned kind of a shitty assignment? Some days it seems like we got a real shit sandwich, doesn't it?
No bread.
But if indeed this is my assignment and it's a difficult one, who better to play this part than me? And who better to play the part that is your life than you? Because whether you know it or not, you've been perfectly armed to play that role. And if you don't believe me, how many of you have been through some shit? Look at who I'm talking to. How many of you have survived it? So you're 100% successful. I think we have to owe most of that to grace if we pay attention. Just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us and humbly rely on Him, does He enable us to match calamity with serenity. We never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it's the way of strength. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let Him demonstrate through us what He can do. So, guys, you got to get what we're talking about here. We're not the doers. We're always asking God, what can I do? What can I do? It's the wrong question. What would you have me be? I'm a being, not a doing. Make sense? Watch what they say. We ask Him to remove our fear, because from fear manifests self that defeats me. Remove my fear and direct our attention to what He would have us be. At once we commence to outgrow fear. How many of you feared something, faced it, lost your fear of it? Courage comes on the other side of confronting fear. So we always want power to carry that out, not divergence. Right? I may not always want it, but that's really a better plan because the obstacles in our path are our path. Okay, now about sex. Lance's favorite subject. Many of us needed an overhauling there, but above all, we tried to be sensible on this question. It's so easy to get way off the track. Here we find human opinions running to extremes, absurd extremes perhaps. One set of voices cry that sex is a lust of our lower nature, a base necessity of procreation. And then we have the voices who cry for sex, or more sex, who bewail the institution of marriage, who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. They think we do not have enough of it, or that it isn't the right kind. They see its significance everywhere. How many of you are on one side of that equation or the other? Not enough, not the right kind, or procreation only? How many of you have been on both, depending on what was going on in your life? That's a bit extreme. One school would allow man no flavor for his fare, the other would have us all on a straight pepper diet. They go to a lot of stuff to just have us question our thinking, but the advice, the suggestion is coming. We want to stay out of this controversy. We do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. So the recommendation of the founders is whatever you're judging, it's not their behaviors, it's your thoughts about their behaviors, and that's nunya. Does it make sense? Not because it's a rule, because it doesn't serve. I can't help them, and it's sure as hell not helping me. The only reason I give a shit what you're fixing to do with someone else is if it's interfering with what I was fixing to do with them. Let's get real. I mean, why the fuck do I care? Unless it's a cock block, I'm disinterested. We reviewed our own conduct over the years past. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? There's about 7 people here going, I can't believe he said that. Keep coming back. Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where were we at fault? What should we have done instead? You notice how there are a lot of question marks in that paragraph? That will form your 10th step for a lifetime, that paragraph right there. On the fly. Make sense? We got this all down on paper and looked at it. Now, in your 10th step, eventually, you probably won't write them down every time. You may find yourself stuck in your thoughts, which when you might want to practice another principle, call somebody. If you can't work it out with you and God, then call a human. Make sense? Humans are pretty good at pointing out our flaws. They know them intimately. Okay, in this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. So how many of you would like a sane and sound ideal for your future sex life? Look at that. I've got almost a dozen hands. So either one of two things is true right now. Either you're all lying, or you're not wanting a sane and sound ideal. You're just wanting to go freaking riptide wild. And there are a lot of meth addicts here, so that's a possibility. So look, this is about getting a sane and sound ideal for all my future relationships. So in all seriousness, sex is just another symptom of this underlying malady, me trying to find my ease and comfort in the world. And I've now found that my ease and comfort comes from within, not from the world. And so these things we're going to start looking for a sane and sound ideal for all my future relationships because I want to grow more of him and less of me. Okay? All right, so we ask God to mold our ideals and help us live up to them. We remembered always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, never to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised and loathed. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. Now, why did they say must when they told me this book was suggestive? Well, must can have more than one meaning than thou shalt. Must means I wouldn't have gone to all this effort to find out who I was and whose I was if I wasn't going to try and grow into him. So it's kind of a no-brainer. Make sense? I want to grow spiritually because it would be in my best interest to do so. Okay? We must be willing to make amends where we've done harm. Same question. Why would I want to be willing to make amends? Because it's the freedom step. That's where I reduce the ego and empower the spirit. Provided that we do not still bring about still more harm in so doing. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. So some people get, that's why I told you this is really about relationships, but I give examples. I was working with people years ago that were in halfway houses, and they would go to work somewhere, and the halfway house would keep their check until they had all their rents paid up. Some of you probably had that experience. And so I'd be working with these guys, and the first week would come where they no longer owed it all to them, and so they actually had money, and they would come to me, Joe, will you hold my money? I don't want to get high. I said, no, but I will help you inventory your relationship with money, because right now money is your God. So let's unwind it a little bit. Did you ever get high when you had no money? Yes. Oh, hell yeah. Have you been high when you had money? Well, absolutely I have, Joe. Well, then did money ever really have anything to do with it? Make sense? Same thing with the bracelets. We talked about bracelets. I had a guy with a bracelet on one time. I'm getting my bracelet off. I'm afraid I'm going to go get high. Well, you can keep the bracelet on. Or you could inventory your relationship to that bracelet. How many of you got high when you were on probation? How many of you got high when you were on parole? How many of you got high while you were incarcerated? Then what the fuck's a bracelet got to do? If you ain't high and you're like me, it wasn't that bracelet. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. We don't know what's troubling you, so whatever matter, they just want you to start growing in consciousness. Remember, this power manifests as power, peace, happiness, and a sense of direction. No matter what's going on, he's not only here, he's where I'm going. So the right answer will come if we want it. They talk in promises and conditions. What was the promise? The right answer will come. What was the condition? If he wants it. What if I don't want it? Sometimes it'll come and I'll try and improve upon it. Have you ever got the right answer and go, oh, no. I can do far better than that. How many of you already made up your mind what the right answer was and didn't hear nothing? So the right answer will come. Again, we must worship in spirit and in truth. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were, right? And so the idea is I can't do that based on a lie. So the right answer will come if I want it, and if I don't want it, I'll probably tell God what it is whatever. And God doesn't care about prayers we don't care about. He lives in us. He knows when we don't care. He's like, God alone can judge our sex situations. People say, God doesn't sleep. Well, I don't know. There's a book that says he was sleeping on a boat in the middle of a storm. And when they got troubled, they woke him up and the storm stopped. I just point out to all my theologians here when they get crazy about my seeming whatever. Persons is often desirable, but we let God be the final judge. How many of you had the experience of asking, getting an answer, sending it back for improvement? So we know what it feels like to have God be the final judge, don't we? It keeps going. So you really mean this, don't you? If God wants you to do something, he'll tell you more than once. Don't think that's not what's happening. We realize that some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose. How many of you discovered that? When they say the word fanatical and loose, I'm starting to think they're talking about the same person, but clearly they're I can't walk into that. All right. I have a great deal of respect for you, even though you're really hard on me. Okay, we avoid hysterical thinking or advice. How many of you have experienced hysterical thinking and advice from others? Absolutely. How many have experienced it with yourself and then recognized it? So either way, because we're energy thieves, if we go shopping for opinions, we're bound to find the one that's going to jam us up if we listen. Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. How many of you are perfectionists and don't really want to describe yourself as that, but you're really afraid of failure in every phase? So this is important for us to learn. Number one, the power you've encountered can do anything but fail. So you will not fail. You may learn, you may stumble, but you will not fail. Does this mean we're going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but it's only a half-truth. It depends on us and our motives, so they're going to set a condition for us, okay? If we're sorry for what we've done and have the honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe we'll be forgiven and we'll have learned our lesson. If we're not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we're quite sure to drink. We're not theorizing. These are facts out of our experience. So this is the book, the first 100, and the title of the book is Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. So they have a fair amount of experience with it, and they know if we continue just to run around still with one foot in and the other foot out there in gangster land, we're gonna have trouble. Not because anyone's judging. Gangster land's welcome to, it's still there, welcoming to receive you. But you can't walk in the realm of the Spirit if you have a spirit to harm others. And there's benefits to walking in the realm of the Spirit, but that means I have to shed some worldliness, and I have to shed some ideas, and I can't walk in false identities. I always wondered why no one liked me. And I realized I never gave them a chance to know me. Therefore, how could they like me? And now, I don't know if people like me or not, but I play for an audience of one, and I'm likable, so it'll work. Does it make sense? And I suggest that you learn to play for an audience of one and know that you're likable too. Okay? All right, so to sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity, and for strength to do the right thing. If sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others. So those of you, how many of you are working with others? There you go. That's the ones that have sex problems. Real or imagined, right? Okay, so we think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge when to yield would mean heartache. Guys, whatever else you do, when you feel yourself disturbed, turn your thoughts to another. Find out how you can unburden them. When you do that, you will find your burdens are lessened. People used to say, oh, if you're in trouble, just get your ass to a meeting and tell people your troubles. No, get your ass to a meeting and see who you can help. Matter of fact, help 6 people on the way to the fucking meeting. Just do something for somebody. When you turn your thoughts to another, a window opens into your consciousness and new power flows in. Because you always have more power than you need when you offer it to another. So we have listed and analyzed our resentments, and we've begun to comprehend their futility and their fatality. So this was the first step of action, and we're starting on a new beginning. So step 4 isn't a one and done. We're going to start doing it mentally as we go, but if you need to do another step 4, there's no sin in it. And if you never need to do another step 4, then Godspeed. Get disciplined in your thinking. It's not an argument we're talking about. This is just a practice. When I get disciplined in this practice, sometimes I'll have to write it down, sometimes I won't. I'll always need a human connection to help unburden myself, because sometimes my human burdens are too much for me. Does it make sense? We have commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. We have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies, for we look upon them as sick people. So we've begun to learn, so we're starting to walk out into our sanctification process. It's going to require amends for harms done and approaches and growing through prayer and meditation, and always offering my hand to the new guy. Because no matter how little I know, I always know one more thing than they do if they just got here. Right? That's why our model works the way it is. Have you noticed how it's a member that comes and grabs you up and says, hey man, tell me what you need. Here's where the stuff is. Here's when mealtime is. You think we did that by accident? No. Hell no, they got credibility. Because they've been exactly where you are, and they're telling you it's going to be okay. And why do they know it's going to be okay? Because they're okay. We've listed people we have hurt by our conduct, and we're willing to straighten out the past if we can. In this book, you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. So now they're going to tell you a little bit about the nature of the power they're talking about. They didn't say the fellowship. They didn't say the book. They didn't say my sponsor. They said faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. Because our real problem is our control addiction. And the only substance in the known universe powerful enough to overcome a control addiction is a little substance called faith. Make sense? So we hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. So they're assuming you've had some profound experiences by now. Yes? If you have already made a decision and an inventory of your grosser handicaps, you've made a good beginning. That being so, you've swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. There you have it. Next week we'll look at 5, 6, 7.